If you will, let's welcome Alix Vittetoe. Alix, will you come up here?
Thank you. Good morning. So, my name is Alix, as Jeremiah very adequately already told you. So, who am I? I started going to Heart of the Father almost 4 years ago, and when I started going, I pretty much knew everybody, but now the number of people that I know has gone down. There's so many more people here. So I want to just quickly introduce myself. I was born in Iowa, raised in Florida. I am the daughter of Andrew and Annette Graves back there. It's my brother Phil and my sister Gospel. That's my family. I graduated from Southeastern with a degree in English and Intercultural Studies with the intention of being a missionary in Africa. And then in 2012, I went to Tanzania on a mission trip and discovered there's a people group there called the Vittetoe that God's calling me to. In 2013, I moved to Tanzania, and I've been there pretty much ever since. So that's basically me. And normally how people do this is they kind of go back to the beginning and start forward and then go on to what they're going to do next. I kind of do things backwards, so I'm going to start with what I'm going to be doing next and then move back. I'm a little weird that way. I always do things back to front. Maybe a little Hebrew in me, I don't know. So basically, what is coming up? So I go back to Tanzania on May 1st, and things are going to change. I've been living in one village, for the last year. But this coming year, things are going to adjust a little bit. We're still going to be focusing on this tribe in the village, but instead, I'm sure you guys remember Tori. He's also a missionary in Tanzania. He's kind of my boss. So I work out there with another girl named Lucy, and so me and Lucy and Tori are actually, instead of working in separate places like we have been doing, we're going to kind of come together, team up, and we're going to, together as a team, split our time between those different groups that we work with, which makes us work better as a team. I work better as a team player. I don't work very well alone. I'm not as effective. It works for accountability, so we all have people around us to say, hey, what you're doing, stop it. And just effectiveness in general, when you have people behind you to support your vision and to help you accomplish the projects that you have on your heart to accomplish, just so much more gets done than when you're out there trying to wade through it and do it all on your own, and it gets very hard. So that's the next step for us, for me, and it's not going to be a permanent change. Eventually, Lucy and I are going to move back to the village, but it's just the next season for us. So now, going back to what's past. So last year, I was here a year ago, and a year ago, I was just heading into a new season. My first year in Tanzania, I spent time kind of traveling around and getting to know the lay of the land and trying to find a way to get to this tribe that I've been trying to get to for so long. But then after that, last year, I found Lucy. She was willing to go to the village with me, and we decided to move out there and just kind of live out there and start doing full-time missions among this tribe. So we moved into this village called Magalada, and basically this is how you get to Magalada. You go to Shinyanga, which is the biggest town in our region. You take a very small road, and you keep going down that road, and you keep going, and then you turn on an even smaller road, and then you keep going, and you keep going, then the road stops, and then there's our village. And it's literally a desert in every direction. We're going through a drought. Our area's been going through a drought for so long, and even during the heavy rains, we barely get any rain in our village at all. And we have two tribes living in our area. We have the Wasukuma tribe, which they actually are the ones we live among in our village, and they're considered a reached people group. Then we have the Vittetoe, who are considered an unreached people group, and we live right on the outskirts of their territory. This village is right outside the territory of this tribe. And that's a tribe we're trying to reach. They're one of the largest remaining tribal groups in Tanzania. They still live in their communities as a tribe. They haven't assimilated like many other tribes in Tanzania. They are very nervous to accept any Western help. So I come out there and they're not really sure they want to talk to us. They're not really sure if what we're trying to do is good. So we're still building relationships with them. That was where we had to start with this tribal group who they weren't sure if they even liked us very much. They pretty much just saw us as people who had money to give them instead of, people who were like, hey, we actually just kind of want to get to know you. They didn't believe that. They were very mistrustful of that from us. So the first 4 months we were there, we spent time, the first 2 months, building a house. And when I say building a house, I feel like you guys probably have a different idea of house than what we actually have as a house. So we have a 3-room house. I think it's like 36 feet by 12 feet. And 3 rooms, 12 by 12. And it's a clay brick house. And we have a metal roof over the top. And that is where we live. And so we don't really have much around us as far as comforts. We have in our village no electricity or running water. And the water is so scarce anyway that we have to fetch water from the river. All of the water we get is from the river, which is actually dry, and we have to dig down into the riverbed to get any water. That's where we set up camp and decided that we were going to live. And I'm kind of surprised. I don't know how many of you knew me very well before I moved out there, but the idea of me living out there is like outrageous. That I would even think about living somewhere where there was no electricity or running water, or where there's no way for me to get on Facebook. Like that, no one would have said that was Alix. So when like people from my high school hear that that's what I'm doing, they're like, really? What happened to you? Who's making you do this? But we started out, so I'm a teacher. So I started out teaching. I was teaching English in about 3 different villages outside of our village, and then I was teaching English in our village, and then I was teaching literacy to the Wachachuru tribe as well. So I was teaching about 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, and it was filling up most of my time. Anytime that I wasn't teaching, I was spending time traveling from place to place to teach, and I was kind of using up all of my energy to teach, which I'm not saying that teaching was a bad thing, it just used up so much of me, and there was really not much left that I could use to do the ministry that I had on my heart to do. So I was getting very tired after those first 4 months. We finished those 4 months and I thought to myself, man, I just can't do this again. I focused so much on being busy and not enough on doing the ministry work that I'm just tired. And so we knew after those first 4 months that we had to kind of readjust our schedule and readjust our priorities and fix some things. Which, when it's your first year working on the mission field, that happens. You learn new things and you learn how to adjust, and you learn what's the best way, what does God want you to do in the next season. So the next 4 months, I didn't teach nearly as much. We did some leadership training with our church, but we were really struggling as far as feeling like we were getting anything done. Because I am a really impatient person. I like to see results almost immediately. And so when it was like a month and the whole tribe was not saved yet, I was like, am I doing something wrong? But in reality, we look back over this year and we see many things that God has done that we can't see in the moment. But so the next 4 months, we didn't really focus so much on teaching. We focused more on building relationships. We spent a lot of time doing a lot of love ministry. So we have people in our village who can't afford hospital bills, and we end up taking them to the hospital. We sometimes take people to the hospital 4 times a day, and the hospital is about an hour away from us. So we're constantly going back and forth to the hospital. We have people who come to us who need some kind of a way of getting food, or they need, they have requests. I mean, every morning we wake up and we have about 4 or 5 people before 10 a.m. who have needs that we're expected to fulfill, and we spend a lot of time just working on finding ways to love on people and reach out to people through those needs. So one particular instance I remember, we had this one Watch a True man who came, and he was losing blood, and there was no way of knowing why. And he came to our house. Well, he had gone to the witch doctor, which, by the way, we can see the witch doctor from our house, and it's like, we're always kind of like, Lord, shut it down. His friend came to us from the witch doctor and said, hey, my friend is dying, and the witch doctor won't help him, and we don't know what to do. So I said, okay, I'll go and pick him up from the witch doctor's house, and I'll take him to the nearest hospital that would even deal with blood. It was about 3 hours away. So I went and picked him up at the witch doctor's house, and I got all the kinds of dirty looks from the witch doctor, and got this guy into my car and started driving away, and it suddenly clicked in my head, like, I wonder if this guy knows about witch doctors, like, really knows. Because to them, witch doctor is kind of like the equivalent of just going to the doctor. That's just been their natural way of dealing with sicknesses. So I started telling, like, I just started asking them questions, like, why did you go to the witch doctor first? And they said, oh, well, you know, it's a tradition. You always go to the witch doctor. They know what to do. They've been fixing our problems for centuries. And I said, well, but the witch doctor can help you. And he said, oh, well, yeah, you know, well, my case was special. He can help me this time, but maybe he'll help me again. And I said, well, did he ask you for any money? And he said, oh, yeah, he made me give him money. And I was like, well, did he give it back to you? Because he didn't do anything. And they were like, oh, no, you know, that's not how it works. And I said, so he took your money, but he didn't help you. He said, no, but, you know. I said, well, do you want someone who will help you? And he said, yeah, that's kind of what I was hoping for. And I started moving into this idea of, hey, I know someone who's not only interested in healing your body, but someone who's interested in healing your soul. And someone who's interested in bringing you into his loving care. And someone that you can trust and rely on 24/7, who won't turn you down just because of one reason or another, who will always take care of you if you put yourself under his care. And this person said, what? Who? And I said, well, his name is Jesus. And we got this chance to share with both of these two Watch a True men. This person is man Jesus, who transcends the witch doctor, who is so much better, who is not just interested in making money off of you, but who cares for you because of you. And these people, their minds were just blown that there is someone out there who cares for them, who wants to heal them because of who they are and not for what they can get out of it, who doesn't just want money, but who wants your love. And it kind of, I guess you'd think to yourself, well, Alex, you should have known people didn't know that. But to me, it suddenly dawned on me how these people don't realize how corrupt witch doctors are, how evil witch doctors are. To them, a witch doctor is just a doctor. And that was one of the ways we were able to help is by teaching people about the truth of healing and the truth of Christ versus the witch doctors. So that's a testimony to me. I just love the man. I haven't heard from him. I haven't heard anything from him. We dropped him off at the hospital, but his friend was just so interested in hearing more and more and more, and he wanted to tell his friends about this person that healed versus the witch doctor. Another testimony from that time period. So when we first moved to the village, there's we had a lot of children in our village, lots of children, and I'm not so much a kid person, but Lucy loves kids. So we had kids at our house quite a lot. And this one time we had this little boy named Joshua, and he couldn't have been more than maybe 7 or 8 years old. But the first time I saw him, his neck was swollen. His glands were swollen. all over where his glands would be. They were just all swollen. And I knew this wasn't obviously natural, so I asked around to find out what was wrong, and they said, oh, well, HIV. And I was just, oh my gosh, this child is 7 years old. And you could tell it was like late. It was too late for him. And I just, it broke my heart. Lucy and I, we had church leaders from the church we planted to come together and to pray over this little boy, and it really broke my heart for this little boy. And then we just didn't see him. He kind of disappeared, and we just kind of thought to ourselves, well, his life, it took his life. And it was really hard for us to accept, but we didn't know what else can we do. And it wasn't until about October when I was at the well where they pump water from the river, and I was sitting there, and all these children started, yelling, Joshua, Joshua, come play with us, Joshua, come play with us. I was like, no way, that can't be Joshua. But then I looked over, and there he was, and you know what? He was, his everything was just fine. Nothing was swollen, everything was fine. I thought to myself, well, what's going on? This must not be the same child. So I asked, and it turns out that several months back, maybe a month after we had prayed for him, he and his mother had gone to the hospital to get retested, and both of them had tested negative. And they're still healthy. And I was I think for me, I just had to sit there like, no. What? No. What? No. And I just was over and over again thinking, that's just not possible. But that's the thing. It's like, yes, it is possible, because you know who we work for? A God who makes everything possible. So that's not impossible, it is possible. So why did I think anything could be impossible? So this little boy, Joshua, who's now a regular attendee of our church, he's just this amazing little boy. We love playing with him. He's a sweet kid. I'm so happy his mom has started coming to our church too. She was healed. We didn't even pray for her, and she was kind of healed by extension. And I'm amazed, and so it's a wonderful testimony. So I talked about our church plant, but I didn't really tell you about the church plant. When the first month we were there, we planted a church in our village among the Wasakuma people. They had been looking for a church. There were Christians in the village. They'd been looking for a church for a long time, but they needed someone to kind of lead the way into a church. Because they work on a basis of there has to be a pastor, and then we can have a church. But if we don't have that one person who can run everything, then there's no way we can even, come together as a group. So we planted this church, and we started out with maybe 3 or 4 people, specific friends of ours, and it's grown a lot since then. It's fluctuated in and out, obviously. We have maybe 15 people who come on a regular basis now, which we're very happy about. But I'm more excited about the changes I've seen in the people that come than the numbers that have grown. Because we started out, our church, there's also another church in our village, it's a Lutheran church. And when we started our church, we're the Pentecostal church. And we started our church, and I heard this other church worshiping the first Sunday. I said, well, who's that? And said, oh, that's the Lutheran church. And they gave me this look. And I said, oh, cool, well, we should maybe have a one Sunday where we all worship together. And they were like, no, I just said that's a Lutheran church. I was like, well, so? And it suddenly occurred to me, oh, they're working in this segregated denominations thing where we can't all worship together. So they're Lutheran, so they must be bad. And we're Pentecostal evangelistics, we must be good. So that kind of in my head, I started thinking, okay, well, that means we got to work on unity. These people got to understand the fact that we are the body of Christ. And we have to learn to worship Christ as a body because, divide and conquer, that's effective. And we can't let that happen to us. So I went around to churches from our village and from villages within miles and miles radius of us. I think we crossed maybe 5 or 6 denominations. And we invited the leaders to come to a leadership seminar over Friday and Saturday. And then on the Sunday, we would have a unity service where all of these churches came together to worship as one. And the response was phenomenal. People were all excited about it. They're, oh yeah, that'd be a good idea. Yeah, we should do that. And we had the Lutheran Church, we had the African Inland Mission, we had our churches. We invited Seventh-day Adventists and Catholic churches to come. And we just, like, we spanned, I don't know, I can't remember all of the denominations now. But we hosted over the summer while my family was there and a couple other people. And we all taught, the first day we taught the qualities of a biblical leader. The second day, the responsibilities of a biblical leader. And then on Sunday, that was when all the churches came together for a big worship celebration of Christ, all as one. And all of these churches accepted that the Catholic leaders they actually forbade anyone from their congregations from coming, but quite a few actually did. And I'm still trying to decide how I exactly think of that. But I don't want people, defying their leadership, but I was really glad they were there. But before we actually had a unity service, I had meetings with all the pastors from the churches, so we could decide, I wanted to be the one that inspired this, but I didn't want to be the one leading this. I wanted them to be the ones to take charge and start moving on with it. And the pastors all came together. They decided they loved the idea so much that they created a little board, and they had a treasurer and a secretary, and they decided they were going to start hosting them monthly at different churches every month. And ever since then, since June, every month, there has been a unity service, a cross-denominational unity service, where the churches in the surrounding villages in our district all come together to worship Christ as one body. It amazes me. And they do it at different churches every time. So one Sunday, it'll be at the Peffa Church, which is my church. And then another Sunday, it'll be at the Lutheran Church, etc. And they mix their worship. So they're not just it's not just hymns, it's not just crazy worship songs. It's all of it together is one. It's the most beautiful thing to me to see that happening. That's one of the things I think Lucy and I look back and we're like, yeah, that God has really done something with that. Other things about our particular church plant, they've become, when we first started, they were like, okay, there's a certain church model we have to follow. And we have to be like all these other churches. So we have to have a choir. And we have to follow this certain order of service. And because you guys are leaders, you have to sit at the front. And Lucy and I, we don't really like that. We're not like people who like to be up at the front of things. So we started sitting with all of them, and they were scandalized. They were like, you guys are the leaders. You can't sit with us. And we said, well, we get used to it because we're going to. And now they're kind of used to this idea it's like corporate. All of us together are kind of, worshiping, and there's no separation between leadership and the congregation. There's no hierarchy that says we're more spiritual than you guys are. And that's wonderful. That's changed. Also, they've started, this church is, I don't know when it was, maybe August or September. The church we didn't know about this. They kind of blindsided us with this after church one day. They had selected one person to be their representative and came up before us and said, we don't know how you think about this idea, but we kind of were thinking it would be okay to maybe do evangelism in the village sometime. And I was like, okay, I would love it. Let's do it. But they wanted us to teach them, okay, well, where do we start? What do we do? What verses do we follow? How do we tell them the story, etc.? So we began this thing where after church on Sunday, I have a little class. And we do some kind of basic training of, this is kind of how you would approach it. John 3:16, let's start there. How do you talk to people? Ask them questions. And just easy ways for these people who have never done any kind of evangelism before to go out to their neighbors and friends and to begin evangelizing. And now it's a regular thing. Every Sunday, after church, they go out into their village and evangelize. They finished evangelizing our village after a month. And we had so many people that they pray for now. They have like a prayer list. They pray for people. They have healings or people they're praying for healing for, all this kind of stuff. And now they're moving on to other villages so they can go on and evangelize in other villages and other communities that are far out. So to me, I'm like, well, that's what I wanted. It didn't come from me either, which was like the best part. That was not my idea. That was their idea. So it's definitely a God thing. The other thing that is amazing about this church is they're so generous now. These people have next to nothing. And yet, every Sunday, they give in the offering. And because we don't have an official pastor yet who they're supporting, they don't really know what to do. They didn't really know what to do with the funds. So we had one Wataturu woman who, the tribe had kind of ostracized her because she decided to marry a man who wasn't from the tribe. So she didn't have a home anymore. She had about 3 children, and one of her children was really sick, and they didn't know why. And she had nowhere to live, and the church took her in and started supporting her every week. They gave her, from their offerings, they gave her money for the week for food and for shelter and for medicine for her children. And there's also another older widow in our village who her husband died over the summer and left her with pretty much nothing. And the church decided they wanted to support her as well, so they gave her, they don't just like give her money, they come by and they bring her food as well. And it's hard to explain to you how much of a change that is from when I first got to know these people, that so much of their heart has changed. And the examples they are setting for the rest of the people in the village. Lucy, I Skyped with Lucy the other week, and she was saying how, she's like, well, our church is kind of beginning to get that reputation for being a church that is always like giving people stuff. I said, well, I don't know that that's bad. That we're getting to be known as a church that's loving on the community. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think we should promote that. That should be, I mean, what a better avenue for showing people God's love. But with the particular work with the Wataturu tribe, we tried doing church planting in a certain model, which worked with the Wasukuma people. In other words, you plant a church in kind of a central location, or you have like a central location gathering, and people come collectively to gather at that place. Well, the Wataturu community is spread out in little family units, and the only times they gather together are 1, the men come together for an elders meeting, or 2, they come together for some kind of big celebration, like a wedding celebration or a birth of a baby or something. And so for us to say, like, every Sunday we're going to come together for you know, a small group, or for even eventually a church or whatever, it's unnatural for them. They don't, it doesn't fit for them. They won't follow through with it. It just doesn't work. And we tried to do that this last year. We were trying to make that work. And I realized, like, pretty much after that was over, I said, well, this has not worked. Why has this not worked? So we had to start, you know, evaluating, well, what can we do next? And looking at the culture, I realized, you know what? They're family units with, you know, a father figure as a central role. And then they come together to celebrate. And I suddenly got this model in my head. Well, what if each family unit was like its own little church? And that within the family, they were having church. And the father was like that pastoral figure who was leading his flock, which they're shepherds, so I like that analogy. And then they all come together to have a celebration, which what is church but a celebration of Christ? I mean, really. So they can come together for these wedding celebrations and celebrate for weeks on end. I have seen them dance nonstop from morning till 2 a.m. the next day. And you can hear them, and they just keep going and going and going. I'm thinking to myself, man, if they can do that for Christ, that would be amazing. Who says that church has to look like this? Who says church has to look like that? What if church looked like coming together for a celebration that lasted for 2 or 3 days at a time? What if their church was, the father figures ran a church, and then the whole tribe came together to celebrate and worship? Does that that mean that that's not a church? That is a church. That is, I believe, what God how He has already prepared this tribe for Him. He has already made a place for Himself within this tribe. And it took us a year to find it, but we found it, and we're going to work. That's the next thing with this tribe is we're starting by doing, going from family to family, instead of trying to gather them unnaturally from their family units, going from family to disciple and evangelize and encourage and build up. And then they, within themselves as a family unit, will become a church. So that's where we're going. That's the future of our work. It's really exciting to me. I can't wait to start it. We have a new discipleship series and everything that we're going to start with the family units. And before I close, I just really want to say how much I appreciate the support of Heart of the Father where I'm at. It gets very dry out there, physically and spiritually. But to know that I have so much confidence in the prayer warriors at this church. To know that there are people behind us and the work that we're doing. And I can't thank you guys enough for being as supportive and prayerful as you have been. And I was in prayer this morning before church and just amazed at the lion spirit that I feel in that room. So thank you guys very much. Thank you for letting me share with you. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the prayer.